On my birthday, there was no cake, no candles. Instead, my parents unveiled a spectacle. Nearly 100 relatives sat in careful rows as my father pushed a thick folder toward me, the way someone might slide a legal document across a desk. Inside was a statement totaling nearly $4 million, an invoice for the cost of my existence. My mother silently removed my photographs from the walls. My sister calmly reached for my car keys, explaining that Dad had already transferred ownership. Then, as if it were the final act, my boss stood up and dismissed me from my job. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I stood, walked out, and let the silence speak for me. Before I explain how that silence became something they never anticipated, tap like and share where you're listening from. And if your family has ever tried to dismantle you this way, your voice might help someone else feel less alone. My name is Amanda. I'm in my early 30s, and for as long as I can remember, I was the child my family never quite knew how to place. I wasn't impressive enough to boast about, and I wasn't delicate enough to protect. I learned young that love in our home was subtle, conditional, and always came with expectations. From the outside, we looked perfect, an elegant house, a long drive, holiday gatherings staged like magazine spreads. People envied us. Inside, everything ran on invisible rules. My father, Richard, believed money equaled value. My mother, Elaine, believed silence kept the peace. And my younger sister, Lena, quickly learned that admiration was a currency, and she spent it well. I was the dependable one. When the Wi-Fi crashed before a party, I fixed it. When finances got messy, I cleaned them up quietly. I never asked for recognition. I thought that was what family meant, carrying weight without being seen. The walls told a different story. Lena's face filled frame after frame, vacations, graduations, carefully chosen moments. My photos were sparse, tucked into corners, easy to remove. I noticed, but I convinced myself it didn't matter. I had my own apartment, my own job, my own car. Independence felt like armor. The night of the dinner, I arrived straight from work, still in my jacket, my heels sensible and worn. I paused at the door, listening to laughter and clinking glasses spill into the hallway. My name drifted through the room once or twice, followed by polite smiles. My mother barely glanced at me, focused instead on perfecting the setting. My father worked the room, shaking hands, telling practice stories. Lena stood at the center, radiant and sure, as if the space naturally belonged to her. I told myself it was just another family dinner. That I was imagining the tension. I took my seat and waited. I didn't yet realize this wasn't a celebration, it was a trial. The meal unfolded with rehearsed precision. Dishes appeared together, wine was poured without asking, conversations overlapped just enough to feel lively. I smiled when expected. I nodded on cue. Beneath it all, something felt wrong, like a quiet hum of warning. Midway through dinner, my mother stood. Without a speech, without a sound, she walked to the wall behind me and lifted a frame free. It was my photo. Just me, 16, sunburned, laughing at something unseen. She placed it face down on the sideboard and returned to her seat. No one reacted. That silence cut deeper than words. My father cleared his throat, and the room obeyed. He smiled, the way he did when he believed he was being fair. "Amanda," he said, sliding the folder toward me, "it's time we talked." The weight of it was unmistakable. Inside was a neatly organized breakdown of expenses, years of care reduced to numbers, totaled into one final sum. "About $250,000, he said. "Everything we spent raising you." The room blurred. Someone chuckled awkwardly. "This isn't cruelty," he added. "It's responsibility. Adults repay what they owe." I looked around the table, at my mother's lowered gaze, at my sister's calm expression. "And if you can't," he continued evenly, "then we should take some distance. No contact until it's settled." That's when I understood. This wasn't about repayment. It was about erasing me, turning love into a balance sheet, my life into a bad investment they were ready to write off. I closed the folder with steady hands. My heart was anything but calm. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Because before I could stand, my sister leaned forward, her fingers already closing around something cold and metallic on the table. That was the moment the evening dropped its mask. Lena never acts in a hurry. She understands pacing the way other people understand breathing. Her arm moved across the table with practiced ease until her hand closed around my keys. The faint jingle of metal sliced through the room, sharper than any laughter had been all night. She didn't meet my eyes right away. She rolled the keys between her fingers, watching them flash under the lights, then smiled as if she were doing me a favor. "Dad signed the car over earlier today," she said evenly. "You weren't really using it in a way that benefited the family." I looked at the keys a moment too long. The car wasn't extravagant. It wasn't status. It was freedom, or so I believed. The thing that got me to work, to appointments, to a life outside that house. That's when it hit me, even my independence had terms and conditions. Before I could speak, my father motioned toward the end of the table. "That takes care of the final item," he said, like he was concluding a board meeting. That was when I noticed Mark, my manager, standing near the door. He looked uncomfortable, trapped, like someone who'd agreed to be somewhere he didn't belong. I felt the realization before I fully thought it. Mark cleared his throat. "Amanda," he said carefully, after reviewing some information that came up tonight, "we're ending your employment, effective immediately. No meeting. No explanation. No paperwork. Just a sentence dropped between courses." The room went still. Dozens of eyes fixed on me, waiting. Hoping, maybe, for a breakdown they could justify later. Nothing happened. For a brief moment, I felt empty. Then something settled in, dense and unmovable. I rose without rushing, slid my chair back into place, picked up the folder, and tucked it into my bag as if it were junk mail. I met my father's eyes. He looked relieved. I glanced at my mother, who focused intently on her folded napkin. Lena twirled my keys, already convinced she'd won. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I didn't offer a farewell. I left. The crunch of gravel followed me down the driveway. No one called after me. By the time I reached the sidewalk, the house behind me felt sealed shut. I didn't know my destination yet. I only knew I wasn't turning back. I didn't flee to anywhere dramatic. I walked. Block after block. Past houses glowing with warm lights, sprinklers clicking in steady rhythm, people laughing in kitchens that smelled like ordinary dinners and uncomplicated lives. With each step, the shock drained away, leaving something colder and sharper. When I reached my apartment, my feet ached, but my hands didn't shake. I left the lights off. Dropped my bag onto a chair. Placed the folder on my desk. Then I opened my laptop. The dark screen and blinking cursor felt familiar, grounding. This was where things made sense. I work in cybersecurity. I don't chase revenge, I follow patterns. I find inconsistencies. I trace paths people assume no one will notice. And my family had never been careful with theirs. I began with what I already knew. Old accounts I'd helped manage. Payments I'd temporarily covered. Transfers my father had brushed off as harmless delays or accounting quirks. I'd trusted him then. He was my father. People don't audit family. Systems don't care who you are. Less than an hour in, a pattern emerged. Regular amounts. Clean timing. Monthly deposits from relatives who believed they were investing safely under Richard's guidance. The names were familiar immediately: Uncle Paul, Aunt Helen. Careful, kind people who still sent handwritten birthday cards. The money never stayed where it was meant to. It passed through briefly, then vanished, redirected to expenses that had nothing to do with investing. Luxury rentals. High-end shopping. Flights. Hotels. Lena's life. My stomach didn't drop, it tightened. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. This wasn't favoritism. This wasn't emotional neglect. This was something far heavier. Something that came with real consequences. My phone vibrated once. Then again. I ignored it. I kept going. I didn't hack anything. I didn't cross legal lines. I organized what already existed, mapped timelines, matched totals, labeled transactions as they actually functioned, not how my father explained them away. When dawn began to slip through the blinds, the picture was complete, and it was ugly. I saved everything. Backed it up. Took a breath. Only then did I check my phone. Missed calls stacked endlessly. My mother. My father. Lena. And then Mark. Mark's message was short. Panicked. He said he needed to talk. He left messages saying there'd been a mistake, that he'd been cornered, that none of it was personal, that maybe we could undo the damage. I never replied. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts and stopped at the name I'd hoped I wouldn't need. The regional director. She'd greenlit my last major assignment. She was the one who stayed composed when a breach sent everyone else into chaos the year before. She picked up on the second ring. Amanda, she said quietly. I know it's late. I'll be brief, I told her. I was fired tonight. It didn't go through HR. There was no documentation. It happened during a private family gathering. She didn't speak. My manager made that call, I added, using personal claims from my parents, without confirming any of it. The pause on the line shifted, heavier now. Give me 5 minutes, she said. While I waited, I made coffee. No sugar. No cream. Something solid. 4 minutes later, my inbox chimed. My system access was restored. The termination was voided. Another message followed, formal, restrained. Mark had been placed on leave pending investigation. I was told to take the next day off and return the following week. I sat down slowly, the warmth of the mug steadying my hands. One support column gone. My phone buzzed again. This time, I answered. It was my father. Amanda, he said sharply. You need to undo this. Immediately. I didn't cause it, I replied. I passed along information. You've started something, he snapped. People are asking questions. I organized what already existed, I said. Nothing more. You don't understand the consequences, he said. I understand them now, I answered. He showed up at my apartment that afternoon. Not the polished host from the night before. No charm. No audience. Just an exhausted man standing too close to my door. Open up, he said. I cracked the door just enough to see him. This was for the family, he rushed out. For security. For what we built. You build me, I said calmly. Publicly. That was discipline, he said. You needed to see the bigger picture. You took other people's money, I said, and punished me for being alive. His gaze slipped away. Behind him, Lena lingered near the stairs. The confidence was gone. No shine. Just panic she couldn't quite hide. We can still contain this, my father said. We can fix it. Not for you, I said. For them. My phone rang again. This time, it was my uncle. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He thanked me. You didn't destroy the family, he said quietly. You exposed the fractures. My father heard every word. His shoulders slumped, like the fight had drained out of him. Please, he said. Just stop. I studied him, truly, for the first time, without hope, without fear. You taught me that actions have prices, I said. This one's yours. I closed the door. The aftermath moved quickly. Accounts were locked. Curiosity became scrutiny. Conversations happened without my name attached. The family empire lost its sense of immunity. Lena's borrowed lifestyle collapsed. Deals vanished. Invitations dried up. She tried calling, then texting. Eventually, she stopped. My mother sent one message. Only one. I hope you're satisfied. I didn't answer. A week later, I was back at my desk. Same chair. Same monitor. Lighter air in my chest. I deleted the folder from my laptop, not because it no longer mattered, but because I no longer had to carry it. For the first time, I wasn't cleaning up their mistakes. I wasn't managing their money. I wasn't holding their systems together. I was finished. The consequences didn't arrive loudly. No sirens. No headlines. They came quietly, the way accountability usually does. My aunt and uncle reclaimed control of their finances. Transfers stopped. Questions multiplied. Decisions were made without my parents at the center. That alone rewrote everything. Lena faded first. The travel ended. The spending ended. People who once revolved around her found new gravity. She took a job she used to mock. I didn't celebrate it. I simply noticed the absence where entitlement once lived. My father called less often. When he did, his voice was smaller. No demands. No lectures. Just regret he couldn't quite turn into an apology. My mother texted once, asking if we might talk someday. I didn't respond, not from anger, but from clarity. Work settled into a steady rhythm. My access remained. Projects continued. Colleagues treated me no differently, which mattered more than they knew. I took the day off I'd been given. I slept. I cooked. I let the quiet exist without filling it. For days after the dinner, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls stacked up. Voicemails I never opened. I turned the screen face down and watched it vibrate itself into silence. That's when it fully landed. They no longer controlled the story. They no longer controlled me. I wasn't cast out. I was set free. And for the first time, the space around me belonged to me. This is what I learned. Family isn't where you're priced, measured, or threatened into compliance. Love doesn't arrive with receipts. And silence, when it's your choice, can carry more power than any confrontation. If this story resonated, if you've ever had to defend your future from the people who were supposed to protect it, share your experience below. Your voice matters. And if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe and stay with me.